How is everyone? Doing well? I've never done this from the desk before. I feel like a talk show host. How's Utah Tech Week going? Good? Unbelievable. Give it up for everybody who organized that and has been putting that on. What an incredible effort to do that. The three people to my right, your left, need no introduction. They are the 2022 Hall of Fame inductees for Silicon Slopes. We've been doing this, over 30 years now? There are incredible legends in the Hall of Fame, and we are so excited to add three more. Please give it up for our Hall of Fame inductees for this year. To start, Jeanette, I want to start with you. Like, what does it mean to you? How does it feel, when you started your company, when you first started out, when you were doing all this stuff, to now be sitting on this stage and being recognized for everything you've done for this state?
Thanks, Clint. It's an incredible honor. I'm still pinching myself about all of this because I'm a storyteller, and that's what I've done. And I love my role in this community of being a cheerleader and telling the stories of people on this stage and in the audience and beyond. And it's been an incredible ride. So I have to admit, when you first reached out and said you wanted to honor me, I mean, there are multiple awards that happened that night, and there's some category ones, and I thought that was it, and I was thrilled. And then one day my phone started blowing up, and I'm like, and I pulled up the poster things with the three of us, and I'm like, what? It's like the main one? I was so excited and honored because I feel like what it means is that our stories matter, and everyone's stories matter, and that my role in telling stories has made an impact is incredibly rewarding. I grew up in Idaho Falls as a quiet person. I always loved to listen. I've always loved people's stories, and I never would have envisioned this, like the spotlight being on me for something like this. So it's just incredibly awesome, and what a legacy you've built with Silicon Slopes and the Utah Tech Council before that. Just the history in this state of celebrating goodness and innovation is incredible. So thank you.
Yeah, the history of this award is really cool. When you used to go to the old UTC office, there were portraits of the Hall of Fame people. We should do that again. I thought that was really something special. You guys all know who John Pestana is, right?
The legend.
Literal Silicon Slopes legend. Like, I don't even know that this area exists without you, John. And what you built at Omniture, what you're building at Observe Point, it's really rather incredible and remarkable, everything that you've had your hand in and been a part of. What has your journey been like, and what does it mean to be sitting here?
Yeah, the journey's been long, I guess. I don't even think I ever really thought about it. Like for me, I've just loved like building and helping take care of people and creating things, and that's just what's always driven me. I've never sat back and thought, oh, I'm trying to accomplish like X, Y, Z. And it's fun. It's been fun to see, the Valley grow, and because like when we first started in tech, it was really hard to get anybody to pay attention to anything in Utah, and that's dramatically changed. And then it's been fun to see the community, and some of the main things that I've supported have been a lot of entrepreneurship things, like with students and things like that, and then even things politically too, which has been fun too, like beyond just the tech industry. Like we pushed the student bill that just got passed just 2 days ago or yesterday. When did it get passed? Yesterday. So it's been a fun ride, and I'm always trying to change the world, but normally it's a little harder for me to get out. Like a lot of people think I'm super extroverted, but like to come to these things like this, it's very hard. Like this is the only thing I've attended at Tech Week this week, So that's good.
Everybody knows Johnathan Johnson, the legend, CEO of Overstock. Been probably should have been our governor when you ran for that. You've done these incredible things. Johnathan, can you talk about just kind of the growth of this industry, the growth of Overstock? It's one of the OGs of Utah Tech, Overstock being from the very beginning, even probably before Omniture, right? Overstock was building stuff around that same time.
Yeah, Overstock started in 1999. I know we were an early client and beneficiary of the Omniture software. It helped launch us. You know,
I personally did your first implementation at
see,
Overstock.
that's look at us together for so long, and I'll be side by side with John anytime. I just think that's great. You know, when I first moved to Utah in 1999, I joined a small publicly traded software firm in Draper. And if you had told me when I was a student at BYU 15 years earlier that I would work in Draper sometime, I would have thought, well, I'm going to be a farmer, or I'm going to be pumping gas, or maybe I'll be at the prison. And, you know, there was a little office park that was kind of starting things up, and Overstock was just up the street in Cottonwood Heights, but this hadn't happened yet. And to see what's happened in 23 years is absolutely amazing. And I've been involved with Silicon Slopes for a long time. I was involved with the Utah Technology Council before that. And I used to go in the Utah Technology Council room and look at those portraits of Hall of Fame inductees and thought, wow, these are the people that have built this community. It was founders, it was inventors, it was investors. And I'll have to tell you, I'm none of those three things. I'm not a founder. You know, Overstock has done some investing. I've done a little bit, but I wouldn't call myself that. And I haven't really invented anything. I've been a manager and a builder of what's already there. And I want to thank you, Clint, and the Silicon Slopes community for recognizing someone that's a little bit different mold than, you know, some of those OG Hall of Fame recipients. Thank you.
Well, it's impressive what you've done. How could we not give it up for Johnathan? I think it'd be useful. And by the way, we'll open this up for questions. So, and I believe we have microphones coming around. So wait to ask your question, just because we're streaming this live and recording it until the microphone comes to you. But I'd love to hear from all three of you on this question. Any advice you have for those listening, watching, here in the room today on kind of what it takes to be successful? A lot of people, like, we kind of see like overnight successes. You look at Ryan Smith now owning the Jazz, sitting courtside, all that type of stuff. And it's like, oh, that was overnight. No, that probably took 20, 25 years, right? What does it mean, and what advice would you give to the folks here and watching on how to be successful and what it takes?
Well, I think you're right. Nothing happens overnight. I mean, we wrote about Ryan. He was on our cover, and he'd been at it, he and Scott and others, for 10 years, and no one had heard of him, pretty much, you know? So much goes into that. Even childhood experiences, all of that leads forward, and there's lessons in failure, there's lessons in all the momentum. So first of all, to acknowledge that. But also, like, it's not like the destination is the goal. The journey is amazing. You know, even like being here in this room together, all of us are at a different place in our journey. And it's cool to touch base and to have these checkpoints where we're like, how are you doing and where are you at? I think that's really, really cool. I also would say Utah, you're in the right place. So if you're wondering, you know, how to move forward or whatever, you're in the right place. It's the right time. It's always the right time to start and build a company. But this is an incredible ecosystem. I love the collaboration. And you lead out on that. You know, we're not just a bunch of competitors in these buildings fighting for talent, fighting for dollars. We're all in this together. We're all on the same team of making the world awesome and employing people and generating income so then we can bless the community. We've all had political involvement of one kind or another where we see that we're not just trying to build a business. We're not just about the balance sheet or whatever. We're not just about the numbers. It's about like the whole person. It's about the whole community. It's about life. So also to see that, because of all the companies I've written about, pretty much I could say all of them that have really succeeded have been about more than just themselves. Like karma is a real thing. If you do good in the world, your business succeeds. You know, there's a lot to that. So that's another thing I would say as well. And it's never too early. I mean, of course, we see these big donations of millions. But if we start a pattern, I mean, John Huntsman used to give $50, John Huntsman Sr., when he didn't have it. And that set a pattern of I'm a giver, and look what he and others have done.
Yeah, that's incredible. John?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're trying to get going and doing something here in this community, and I speak a lot to, you know, entrepreneurs and mentoring people, I really think the biggest thing is you just have to start. And there's so many people who are just a little afraid. especially the youth, it's really easy, I think, to start something like when you're in college and you have nothing to lose. But if you're older and you probably actually have better ideas when you're older because you've been in the business world and you've seen what needs to be fixed. But it's just going to be a little riskier. But work at night, start working on something. But so many people just keep talking about it and never do it. And I think the other critical thing is at least try and pick an industry that you could actually create something of value in. Because lots of times entrepreneurs especially, like they'll start something, but it's really just a job, and there's a difference of like creating yourself a job, which is okay if that's what you choose to do, versus like creating something that could really change the world and be a part of something. And most of us who do that actually don't know what that was right at first. We actually just get started, and then our eyes open up as we're exploring those industries. Like I started building websites, right?
Right.
A lot of people don't know, Josh, James, and I, we built like some of Zions Bank's first website, Ancestry.com's like first website, Lagoon's first website, like all these original things back here. And that's what then started opening our eyes to, we could track visitors on websites.
It's incredible.
I would say 3 things that help you kind of get started and advance your career. One is you've got to be a continual learner, because what you know today is probably not what you're going to be doing in the future. When I was in college, the internet wasn't a thing. If someone said, you're going to be the CEO of an e-commerce company, I mean, that was like a sentence that didn't even exist. When I was the president of Overstock, blockchain and cryptocurrency weren't a thing. And yet I wound up running our blockchain investment arm before I became the CEO. It's because I like to learn. I like to know what's next and what's coming out. And keeping up will open up new avenues for you. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second thing I'd say is, at your companies, volunteer for projects. I'd been at Overstock about a month when a normal contract, I was the lawyer there, came across my desk that had a lot of different aspects to it. It was a request for proposal from a company called Palm. They used to make Palm Pilots. Those aren't even a thing anymore, as everyone sits here on their smartphone. That was kind of what we did before smartphones. They wanted to liquidate their returns. They were doing it through eBay. And I went to our CEO and I said, let me captain this project. And he goes, what do you know about marketing? What do you know about merchandising? What do you know about warehousing? What do you know about testing? I'm like, I don't know anything about all those things, but I know more about kind of everything than any other person. Give me a chance. And we won that RFP, we won the bake-off, and I became the 5th member of an executive team. Volunteer for projects. Stretch yourself. It will make you a better person at your company, and it will make you a better person if you want to start something new. And then the third thing I would say is be a problem solver. Be a problem solver at your company. Be a problem solver as you're building new businesses. And try and be a problem solver in the community. And sometimes you'll try really hard. You may have a midlife crisis and run for governor and lose. And you're not any good at solving the problem. But that's okay too, because you're out there and sometimes you're going to be successful and you're going to be part of a solution, and sometimes you're going to learn so you can be part of the next solution.
I actually want to pick up there on, we're in the middle of a legislative session. You mentioned the education bill that recently came through. All of you, Jeanette ran for office, you ran for office. John, you've done incredible work with Libertas and other projects that you've found.
But never run for office. I'm smarter than that.
A true Hall of Famer.
That's why you're in the middle.
You should run.
I do want to think about what is the future of Utah and the future of Silicon Slopes. Maybe we'll start with you on this one, Johnathan. Where do you see it going? What pitfalls do you see, and how can we as a community maybe help mitigate those?
Well, where's the future? I think the future is bright. There's always a lot of doomsayers that say we could do better, we could do better. And they're right. We could do better. But the future is bright. We have an unbelievably great workforce here. we still have relatively low taxes, relatively low government interference with business, although every time the legislature in session, I just get worried there's going to be more constraints. They pass 10 to 15 laws a day, which even the great lawmaker Moses couldn't do in his whole life. I mean, it's remarkable how much laws they have. But I think the future is bright. And I think it's bright because we have creative, entrepreneurial organizers and builders. I think it's part of the nature here. We like to build things. We like to organize. We like to improve. And so I think it's good. I think what we've done on this education bill that passed recently will free up people to be creative in their education, give them more freedom in how we educate our children and our grandchildren. This is what I think makes our future bright. It's not more laws, it's more freedom, and I think that's who we are.
I think the main thing is just always trying to make sure that, we're creating environments that are open for people to be able to, create opportunities in businesses. One of my scariest things that I ever hear politicians say is, I'm elected to create jobs. I'm like, oh, are you from communist Russia? I didn't realize that was the government's job, And so I think just making sure that we're, as a state, that we're focused on freedom, I think that's going to allow us to continue to grow. I am very worried about I think with AI and a lot of things that are coming right now, it's going to scare a lot of people. And when people get scared, they have a tendency to want to clamp down on things. But I truly believe things like AI and robotics are the only way that all of humanity can have success. Like, if you think about our world today, somebody else has to bring you something. Somebody else has to serve you in some way. Like when we even say we want medical care, well, you're basically choosing that somebody else has to provide that to you. And AI and robotics is the only way that every person on the planet could sit on the beach and drink their pina colada, right? And have a robot bring them what they're doing. The concerns are natural resources. I spend way too much time thinking very ethereal about a lot of this stuff, so forgive me. But I think as long as we focus on the long-term results of what we want as a state and as an overall nation and world, we only have success coming our way. I mean, truly, like what's happening right now is revolutionary for all of us and will only make all of us have more in life, but it might take a bit of a shift in how our world works right now because honestly, it's going to take some major shift in how even economies function when nobody's needed for anything.
Oh, yeah.
So I love what you said there, that there's a lot of fear, but that's not the right approach, right? I mean, fear is the opposite of innovation. So if we get fearful about the future, we clamp down and we lose what Utah is great at. I think it's easy to be like, well, we have transportation issues, we have cost of housing issues, we have economic issues, and we get kind of worked up about that, especially maybe when we're younger. But when you look at the history of Utah and the country, we have been here before. We've been worried about transportation. We've been worried about all of these things before. And we figure them out, and I love that about our state. I tend to be someone that thinks that it's more important to be for something than against something. Nothing bugs me more than someone that only complains, that actually doesn't have any ideas or solutions. Like, be for something, it doesn't, be for something, figure it out, have a solution and promote something rather than complain or defend, like promote. I tend to just think if we have positivity and if we're solution oriented and if we put the ingredients that Utah's known for together, we're gonna figure this out. Now AI is new and all of that, but we've also been in places of disruption before. And we can learn from that and we can move forward and cool things will happen. I mean, I wanna drink a pina colada on the beach. I mean, that sounds good. You painted a good picture there. so good things, but fear is not the way. Yeah. You've got to set that aside. The fear and anxiety, which we hear those words, way too much in way too many settings, but that's a problem. We can't live there. Yeah. That's not the place of innovation or the future.
Let's open this up. You have three incredible legends here that you can ask whatever you want, kind of. If you ask anything too inappropriate, I'll stop you. But let's open it up here.
I want to start.
Name first, Amelia. We know you, but everyone needs to know who you are.
My name is Amelia Powers Gardner,
Tell everybody what you do.
I'm a Utah County Commissioner.
Yeah.
And that actually leads into my question. So being someone who's responsible for helping ensure that Utah remains the best place in the world to live, work, play, and raise a family, what advice do you have? You know, you think about 23 years ago, this was not like this. And I'm looking at the next 23 years. How do we make sure that we have the base that's necessary for Silicon Slopes to continue to be the world's best place?
John, you start.
Nobody ever likes my answers on these things.
That's why I'll be point counterpoint. How about
Yeah.
that?
You know, because I definitely overall believe the best way, you know, is for the most part, government to stay out of things. Typically, most things that the government's doing, it's somebody's come to them, they're upset that somebody else is getting into their business, so they're actually trying to create roadblocks to competition in most cases. So I think the more that we continually embrace getting rid of most legislation, licensure, even patents, trademarks, lots of things that people would argue with me about, will only create more opportunity overall for everybody in the state.
And I think a way to get there, I mean, I agree with John, by the way, but I think a way to get there incrementally is to make sure that if government's going to be involved, that they create sandboxes for new technology. I love what you've done in Utah County, trying to make it easier for people to vote remotely in a secure way using blockchain technology. That's disruptive. You know, I think as new businesses start, sometimes the existing regulations are so onerous that we should say, okay, until you get to a certain size, run free. We let our kids run out in the backyard free before we saddle them up in school. I mean, there's just, I think that kind of mentality, how do we nurture things to get big enough, is something we nurture them by letting them be kind of unconstrained.
I think all entrepreneurs are pro-freedom, you know, because that's the nature of it. We don't want to sit in a box. We want to explore, and so you know I agree with what they're saying. I think it's tricky. Politicians, by their very nature, are somewhat short-term thinkers because they're going to go back to the voters very soon and get a report card on whether they want to be there or not. But we really need more long-term thinking, so that we can make those decisions that in 20 years we'll be glad we did, even if it's hard and even if it, you know, is uncomfortable for people or whatever. But I think we need to really look down the road and look, what are we glad we did now, you know, that was hard 20 years ago, and look forward like that, because these are complex things. Utah County's geography is amazing, but it's limiting. You know, your lake and mountains and some limited land, and so we need to make some smart decisions that allow for our children, you know, to stay here. So I don't have all the answers, but I think it's important to have the conversations and to collaborate with all of the people. I went to one meeting about visioning the future, and I loved that there were farmers and water rights owners and people that I usually don't see at the networking events. I'm like, we need these people at the table talking about what their needs and challenges are, because that's the only way we can make a decision that meets everybody's needs. So thank you for your service. First female county commissioner in Utah County, by the way.
If I could just follow up on Jeanette's thought of long-term thinking, it's, you know, she brought it up in a government context. I want to bring it back to a business context. As you build businesses and create businesses, they will be more successful if you're thinking about them running forever, and you're not thinking about them, okay, here's my exit. When you think about the exit, your horizon is really close, and you make different decisions than you would if your horizon is, we're building this business forever. And you know, I think of some of the decisions that Overstock has made. We've not tried to say, okay, let's just get an exit and get out of here. We've decided to pivot. We started as a liquidator. We pivoted to a general merchandiser. Now we've become a online home furnishing company. We've been able to change, but it's always looking, how are we going to be around in the long term? And I think if you look at Utah's history and you look at some of the great names, you know, the family names that are kind of legacy names, It's the Eccles family. Well, David Eccles, who the business school up at the U is named after, was a builder. I mean, he built businesses. And when he died, I think he sat on the board of 102 of businesses that he had founded. He was not a build and exit, build and exit. Now, exits come, and when they come at the right time, good, go for it. But if you're thinking with that horizon forever, I think you'll make more value-based decisions and it will help your business in the long term.
That's great. Hey, hi. Should I stand up?
Name?
Concetta Bringhurst. I'm with Ventures Council. We specialize in representing diverse and inclusive founders and investors. So first off, I want to say thank you guys for your contribution to the Utah Wasatch Front for what you've done. I have followed some of you in different ways and am thankful for what you've taught us. I'm wondering, the question I'd like to ask is, what role has diversity and inclusion played in your success and the companies that you've founded or led?
Well, let me start. I became the CEO of Overstock 3.5 years ago. I've been with the company for 20. In that time that I've been the CEO, our board has changed significantly. It's become more diverse. We've gone from having one woman who was our chairman to having 2 women on the board. We've added a black board member. And we haven't done it to check a box and have quotas. We've done it because as we've interviewed different candidates, we've made sure that we would interview a diverse set, but we found that the thinking that they brought would make us a better company. And they have. And when I look at our senior executive team in the last 3.5 years, it's become more diverse. Not by quota design, because I think that's the wrong way to do it, but by being really open to interviewing a broad set of candidates and seeing what do they bring to the table. I think geographic diversity is important. I think diversity of thought is important. I think diversity of experience is important. It makes you understand your customers better, makes you understand the markets better. So I'm a big believer in making sure you have structures in place to bring diversity in that aren't check the box, because I think the diversity makes you better. I hope that addresses your question.
When I started the magazine in 2000, I was 25 years old. So if you're good at math, I just told you how old I am. And we sold our home. We had a starter home, and we sold that to print the first issue and just went all in on this entrepreneurial venture. And what I soon found as a woman in her 20s, an entrepreneur, also in media, is that people were starting to think more about diversity and wanting to include women on boards. So I got invited to sit on a lot of boards early on in my career where I probably didn't really have a lot of value to bring, but I was kind of checking a box. And other women would say to me, like, don't you feel awful about that? Like, you're a box. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to choose to look at it differently, embrace the opportunity, and be so good at the box that they invite other people to the table. So I've spent a lot of time at tables where I've been the only woman. That has changed in our community, and that's been amazing to watch. I'm a small company, smaller than these 2 legends and their companies. But one way that I've really tried to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion is in what I choose to feature. So we do a number of articles, our 40 under 40, our Fab 40, our high school students who will change the world, all the different things that we do. And I am always looking at it in a lens of how can I represent all of the different experiences that people have. And like Johnathan said, diversity is not a narrow thing. It's also age diversity, size inclusivity, backgrounds, educational backgrounds, religion, sexual orientation. There's so much. And I'm always thinking, I just want everyone to feel safe in this environment. And so in my seat, what can I do? I can shine a light. I can shine acceptance and love and people's stories. And I hope that's made a difference, that people have read people in our magazine that's like, oh, I didn't realize that. We have a large Latino population here that's often ignored, honestly. And when we're able to highlight it, I know those people then get invited to other events and get to speak. And that brings me so much joy to have opened the spotlight on other groups. So that's the way I look at that from my perspective.
I was going to say, I don't know if I have much more to add. Obviously, I think here in Utah, sometimes I think people can think it's difficult too, right? Because there is, especially if they're talking about just ethnic diversity, because there is so much of a white population here. I take a very libertarian approach where I'm always like trying to just get the best people. I grew up in LA area, so like I grew up in a very diverse area, so I never really thought about it much here. And then when I came here, because I've always just tried to fill my company with the very best people. I've never cared if it was a man, woman, whether they're black, white, whatever. It was always just, how can we move things forward? We were probably one of the very first companies where we had Catherine Wong as our head of engineering way back 15 years ago, So I do think it's important. And I actually feel like the hardest one for most people is diversity of thought.
Yep.
I laugh at these San Francisco companies that have all kinds of diversity and they all think exactly the same. So I think that is a challenge to people of making sure that you really are, because with great diversity in an organization, it's amazing how it empowers you to understand customers. Especially if you're a large organization selling to the world, because like our company, we don't sell to Utah. I mean, we kind of do. Like any person in Utah could become a customer of ours, but the vast majority of our customers are all over the world, not even in America. So understanding those cultures and how they work and all that kind of stuff, you really have to extend yourself to understand the diversity of your customer base and making sure that you're servicing them well. And that can be done through bringing those people into your organization too. Whether that you're able to do that through employees, whether you're able to do that through advisory boards, whether you're able to do that with customer councils, all those things. So I do suggest, especially if you're tackling a business that's going to be very broad, that you're making sure that you're filling your insights through your team and through the outside networks too.
And I think the best way to foster inclusion is to guard against exclusion. Exclusion tends to happen without our knowing it if we don't watch for it. So, one of the things we do is I check to see if we're doing merit increases, what's going on there. If we inadvertently done something, been exclusionary, if we're giving equity out, if we inadvertently done something exclusionary, we look at an interview pool. Did we inadvertently miss something? We always want the best, but I think if you put rigorous guards against exclusivity, you naturally create inclusion.
Ray Smithson. I actually lived in Taiwan for 10 years, and I came back to Utah, once a year, saw all this stuff popping up around, the point of the mountain, and was amazed. But the one thing that really amazed me was a Stanford VC study that said Utah has the highest per capita concentration of unicorn tech companies of any state in the US. And that really, I was like, go Utah. What do you think, what are the ingredients that created that in Utah? What do you think? Because you have a lot more experience than I do doing business, obviously. I would love to hear your opinion on this.
I think that we have a very pioneer spirit here in Utah. Obviously, I didn't grow up in Utah, but I did grow up Mormon, so I think I had a lot of that spirit too. I also grew up with a father who was a salesman, which is not necessarily an entrepreneur, but kind of an entrepreneur, Yeah. And I think that the business schools here have done a really great job focusing on building businesses too. Like entrepreneurship is really embraced at those business schools. And I think that's really helped, create that spirit. Because I know at least at BYU where I went, everybody is rallying, challenging each other. It's like, what are you doing? I'm going to do this, And I think there's a lot of great people in this valley who have supported that. I mean, Clint supported that. John Richards has been an incredible supporter of a lot of the entrepreneurship initiatives in the state. And I think we're really catching up to a lot of places like Silicon Valley on that.
I would say there's 3 characteristics of a Utahn that help us achieve this. Be, know, and do. And I'll do them in backwards order. Do, Utahns have a work ethic. When you hire people to work at your company, they work hard. That's what you need, particularly in startup land. You need people that are going to work really hard to create something out of nothing. No, I think we have a pretty good knowledge base. We've had technologists. We started at Overstock in 1999. Not everyone knew, not everyone in other parts of the country knew how to type or use a mouse. I mean, these things just seem so basic right now. But WordPerfect and Novell, and we've had this kind of culture that's dandelioned out. We get technology, and our universities teach people the knowledge. So do and know. And then B is character. I think when you hire people from Utah, you're hiring people that are going to try and do the right thing. And so I think three things that set Utah apart at a large scale. These people clearly have these in individual people anywhere, are be, know, and do.
Ditto, 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 retweet, retweet. Those were good thoughts. The only other two things I thought of that I hear when I've interviewed a lot of CEOs is the language skills in our community are amazing, because of missionary service and other reasons, people living abroad that have really sought out those language skills. That sets us apart. That's part of our secret sauce. That's pretty cool. I love that. And the other thing I would say is collaboration. And Silicon Slopes is so good at that the original founders of Silicon Slopes, these are people that I think in Silicon Valley, they see each other as more of, I don't know, competitors, enemies at times, I don't know. But like in our community, I feel like we see ourselves as one ecosystem, and that's amazing. We can spend more energy building instead of worrying or competing or fighting or being mad at. And I see that in the tech community. I see that in the nonprofit community. I see that in academia. We have two big universities here and more in Salt Lake, of course. And that is, I think, part of our secret sauce too. And if we lose that, that's to our detriment. If we start being too unnecessarily unkind or competitive or really undermining, that's not good. And those things come back to hurt you, back to that karma thing. I think that's one thing we've done well.
Hi, and thank you so much. I want to just say that I've enriched my life living in Utah because of Silicon Slopes. So my name is Danielle Lynn. I host an internationally syndicated radio show here and podcast. And you mentioned pivoting, and that's exactly it. So we've gone from cassettes to, telepathy. And so now we've developed a platform that is beyond almost what's current in artificial intelligence. And what I'm trying to understand when you come into this community is, how do you know how to, I use your magazines, I use all the resources to find the people who are advancing artificial intelligence so that we could go consult with and say, what we're designing hasn't been designed yet, and we need to innovate. So how would I access that efficiently?
That's a great question. How would someone get ingrained in the Silicon Slopes community who otherwise doesn't know how?
I'm going to go back to my first answer. One of the three things I said was volunteer. Volunteer, get involved. Before Silicon Slopes, there was UTC. I volunteered to be involved in it. When Clint and others started Silicon Slopes, I raised my hand and said, Clint, I don't want to be involved. This community is vast. It's also very collaborative. I think there's kind of a collectivismness in it, but you got to plug in. And that takes time and some personal investment. If there's a particular thing you want to know, ask people in this room what they know about AI technology in media. You ask me, I'm going to say, not very much. But you know what? I'll say, but I bet if you ask John, or I will know someone to point you to talk to about that. And I think proactively engaging, volunteering is really important.
I actually want to highlight that a lot, because I do think, I get asked a lot, every single day. I have multiple people who want to meet with me and things like that. And it's hard to find time. And I will say I do give priority to people that I see that are giving to the community and things like that. And I also give priority to people who are friends of friends, So I think just coming to events, starting to get to know people, you'll start to build up that network. I always describe it like this to entrepreneurs when they're getting started. I always say the world's like a funnel. And when you first start off, you're on the outside of that funnel, and you look towards the center, and it just seems so far away, like you'll never get there. And I felt that way at the very beginning. And then it's just year after year, you're like, all of a sudden you're in the middle, and you're like, how am I on stage now? Like, I don't even know how I got here. And I have 10 friends who are billionaires. Like,
Does that mean I'm getting flushed out of the funnel before too long? Is that what's coming?
it is. It's called death, right? But I do think that it is, like, everybody wants instant gratification, and everybody wants it now. You need to be a little patient. You need to be putting yourself out there. You need to be networking, and you need to be contributing. And by contributing, like when we started Silicon Slopes, it's like we're contributing. We're trying to create things. When I started Libertos, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to create things. And that makes others want to help you too, because they realize you aren't just a leech. Because some people might help a leech once, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this person just takes, right? And that makes you not excited.
I love that. But I mean, everyone being here, you're doing it, right? You're in the room, meeting people, networking. Thank you for facilitating so many great events through the years. I think we're all learning, and some of the things that they've both said already is action. Action is the key. You can talk about it, you can worry about it, but just taking action, walking in the room, opening your mouth, asking the question, asking John to meet with you. And I'm sorry you get so many requests, but thank you for helping so many people, including me, through the years. So I think it's just taking those baby steps and being patient with yourself and knowing I'm not just here to become a billionaire, even though, it's awesome, and John has all these friends, which is awesome. But right, it's just kind of what happens. But like billionaires had amazing days along the way, hard days, good days, all the kind of days, and that's what we're all in the middle of. We're all on this journey and getting the marrow out of today, getting what was the joy of today, what was the lesson in today, what was the failure in today, and seeing that I think is part of it too, is not being in a hurry, but just like enjoying the time.
You know what Jeanette and John have said. I have 5 children, 5 sons, and when they turn 20, I sent them a letter of advice. Now that in Japan, where I turned 20 is the age of adulthood. And so when they're become Japanese adults, I guess, I send them my advice. And it's way too long and it's way too preachy. But one of the things I tell them is be prepared and be patient. Your time will come. You don't know when it will come. It may come slower than you want it to, but it will. When it comes, if you're not ready to grab it, it won't be there. And so this goes back to the very first thing I said. Be a continual learner. Be a volunteerer, and then that will prepare you, and I think it will facilitate the time coming, which is, kind of what John and Jeanette said a different way.
All right, my name is Tiger Wang, and I have built a software called Assistant for about 2 years now, over 2 years. And I was, of course, spending my own money to build on that. So I think you mentioned it in the meeting too. So you just launched that, and now just get me thinking, one, the question is, should I launch that right now? And so the system is pretty good right now. It still have a lot of functions, help people to achieve their goals, to manage their financials, investment, and education is what, how family, relationship, whatever those kind of things. So I have a lot there, but I still have a lot I want to add on, but could take longer. So the question is, should I just launch right now? I think probably a lot in the room, a lot of people have this kind of question too. And 2, should I take investment? So investors, because that's a big software, so it take a lot of money to build that. So what's your thought on that, just for the 2 questions?
Seemed like they were looking at me. I would, personally, I would launch, definitely a big fan of lean startup, so I'd follow that methodology, and I would just try and get feedback as fast as I could, to iterate as fast as I could. I personally would try to get a company to a decent, actually have revenue before I took investors, but that's just me. Everybody takes a different approach on that. You really need to analyze what you're trying to accomplish and whether or not money's needed. Like there are some businesses you literally just can't get started without some kind of investment capital. But modern SaaS companies don't normally fit into that criteria. Actually, there's a kind of this undercurrent that's happening now where a lot of SaaS companies will launch and barely ever raise money because they just get to cash flow so quickly that they don't need to. Like if I was to launch Omniture today because of AWS and all these other services, I probably actually would have never had to raise money, which is an interesting thing.
That's a really hard question to answer in the abstract without knowing your business. I think John did a nice job of it. I think my answers would be yes and yes. I would launch more quickly. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Waterfall development is the bane of development. Agile development, where it's not perfect, but you keep iterating, works. Yes on capital, because it probably opens up doors if you get the right capital to different customers. So without knowing anything about your business and without disagreeing with John at all, if you can do it without raising money, great, but it might help in ways other than just what's in your bank account. It might open some doors for you.
I think we're saying the same thing I do think capital can be really important, but early companies, I find when they get capital, they feel like they have to just spend it. And so often I just see entrepreneurs just spending money and it's not efficient. And so as long as you've realized how you can be efficient with what you're raising the money for, absolutely, all day long, get capital, and that will help you accelerate. But just be careful about, again, you see a lot of companies around here. It's like all of a sudden there's the new pinball machine in here because they raised some money and money's burning in their bank accounts. It's amazing how many young entrepreneurs can't stand money burning in their bank account. And the only thing that's going to put you out of business is running out of money. So keep that in mind too, right? Once you're out of money, you have no business.
Strong balance sheet, strong business. That's what Overstock is. Strong balance sheet, strong business.
Amen.
Let's try to take a few more because we got a little. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, let's go here. You go, Landon, and then we'll send it up here.
So Landon Ainge, I may or may not have a job depending on when we talk. My question is, we have a great entrepreneurial ecosystem, and I really like that people start new companies. We also have a tendency to start companies that look a lot like companies next door. So I wanted to understand your guys' perspective of, is that a good thing because it builds up competition, or what recommendations you would have in people that are evaluating that type of business?
If they start businesses like mine, it's a bad thing. But I'm all for competition. I think it's that's a difficult row to hoe. If you're sometimes, fast follower wins, but if you're copying something that's already big and strong, it's hard to take market share from someone that's got it. And so I think it's a fact-specific question. I think there are iterations. I mean, the first search engine wasn't Google. So Google competed with somebody else and won. It can work, but I think it's pretty fact specific.
Yeah, I think you go for it. The world is huge. Economies are big. There's always room for multiple people in any industry, and sometimes those are the easiest businesses to go and do. Is like you see something that's kind of working, you think I can do that better. And
MySpace.
Yeah. I still run my MySpace account. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, and I'm still running Powwow too, but. So I really do think that sometimes those are even the easier businesses to get started because there's always a proven market. It's not like Overstock was the very first e-commerce. You find your niche, you find your specialty, and you just go for it. I didn't invent website analytics. There was already Web Trends, Analog. There's a whole bunch of systems out there. I just did it a lot better than they did.
I think it was the founder of Wendy's that said when you start something, it needs to be 10% different or 10% better. and then you can go for it. And there's a lot to that. I'm all for, again, back to the don't have fear. You know, this is all going to work out. It's a marketplace that rewards things, and just let that play out. I wouldn't ever be afraid that it's too similar, that things are next door. Like, that will play out. Maybe there will be a merger. Maybe, you know, good things will come out of it. But I just don't worry about that. I think there's room for everyone. Like you said, it's a large world. It's a large economy. Let's just all do what we can in our little corners of the world.
And if you start a cookie company
And make your logo very, very different.
the behemoth sues you, it's actually really good for everybody. That's what we're learning with the cookie wars.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that I finally have the mic. So it's my first time in Utah. I am originally from Pakistan, and I live in New York. And I've been working with AI for several years. The first startup in Pakistan, when AI was launched in Pakistan, it was very scary. And I wanted to be part of it because I wanted to learn. And right now I'm part of Ahura AI, and the focus is learning through AI. When it comes to companies, when it comes to online education, and as sir, you mentioned about learning, it's very crucial. I was so glad to hear that, because that's what we are doing. My question today is about Singularity, because I was part of Sundance Film Festival as a speaker, and the theme was, should we be pushing towards singularity? I just wanted to know, what do you guys think about singularity, and what's your answer as an entrepreneurs? What should be the steps that we should take? And just, yeah.
Jeanette didn't have a thought on that. Man, this is a tough one, you know. I don't know. Because getting to like a general intelligence, you know, level and having a singularity happen, I mean, who knows, maybe it's already happened and we just aren't aware of it. This is scary, and I think it's going to scare a lot of people what's going on, but I hope that we're able to wrangle it enough that it helps us versus creating a Terminator scenario, right? But I don't know if any of us have the answer on that. I think that's such a big discussion right now. But overall, I'm just overall excited about AI, and I want to make sure we do the best we can to make sure it's on our side and help all of humanity versus, you know, destroying us. Which there's lots of books out there that you can go read. So.
If John doesn't have an answer, I don't have an answer.
Let's take another one.
Dave Politis. So at the risk of being a big bummer here, I have this fear that Utah is actually becoming two Utahs, Wasatch Front Utah and rural Utah. And the disparity between the two is growing. I don't see it actually coming closer together from a standpoint of opportunity, from a standpoint of wealth. And am I crazy? And if I'm not crazy, what can we do? Should we do? Is it even possible to do anything? And do those who live in rural Utah even care?
Go ahead, Jeanette, but I got a lot of opinions about this, but you start.
Well, I'm excited to hear your opinions, but my first reaction is I'm not sure I agree with you. I feel like the technology, work from home, hybrid has actually opened up a lot of opportunities. We have a lot more people in rural communities who can work for the state, work for the government, represent those smaller communities. So I've loved seeing that, and our state government has allowed for more work from home for that particular type of work. So I think that's awesome. The other thing that I've found in the political meetings that I've been part of is a lot of rural Utah they don't want to be Wasatch Front. That's why they're there. And we don't have a corner on all the ideas, so I don't want to impose our way of life on anyone else. I feel like people have choices and they can make their choices. I come from Idaho, I lived among farmers, and there's a way of life there that's beautiful. And so I don't really necessarily want to manufacture a lot of solutions for rural Utah. Of course, include them. They're part of that geographic inclusivity that we talked about earlier. But I actually feel like we've made progress. That'll
But
be
why
my-
do you think Utah County is so much better than Salt Lake County?
Well, how long do you have?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Good commissioners. Okay. I think, yes, there is a difference. Disparity might be the right word, but I think difference is a little bit better word. I think some of it is focus by what the people there want. I think some of it's educational opportunities, which are problematic. I think this bill that passed, and I hope and expect the governor to sign, will help improve education. I think remote work can go a long way toward that. But I also think sometimes at the government level, and I think the government shouldn't be the solver of problems, but sometimes they don't want certain kind of jobs in rural Utah. And I'll give an example. 10 years ago, I was back in New York, walking the garment district, talking to our suppliers that gave us clothes that we sold in overstock. And there was a big onshoring move. They were trying to manufacture more of their clothes in the U.S. And I said, well, what makes a good place? And they go, oh, it's got a rail, or transportation. It's, they listed all these things. And I thought, wow, that sounds like Carbon County, Utah. Or it sounds like Box Elder, all these things. And I actually went back to the governor's Office of Economic Development. And I said, I've talked to 4 or 5 New York-based name brand, you would all know them, apparel companies. And I said, they want to learn about manufacturing in Utah. And could they manufacture their clothes here? The response, those aren't the kind of jobs we want. Now, 3 or 4 years later, when I was campaigning in Box Elder County, in Carbon County, I got the opinion by the people who live there that any kind of job or those kind of jobs were the job they want. So I think that there's an arrogance sometimes on the Wasatch Front that if you don't do it our way and it's not tech jobs and it's not what we think is cool, then it's not worth bringing to Utah. That's a bunch of hooey.
Let's take one more because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Who wants to be the last question? There we go. Look at that. Well, we'll do 2. We'll do you 2. So we'll do 2.
Kalen Huntsman, I work for the University of Utah Business School. All the changes with education and government, what does the future look like for people going to college and everything like that? Because we see a change at where we're at. What does the future of education look like in your guys' opinion?
And how do you not grab the mic on that one? I just know you've got thoughts on this. Go ahead, Jeanette.
I love that we have diversity of experience and opinions on this, I'm sure. I'm on the board of trustees at UVU, and so I see the world partially through that lens of the university. We're very aware of the movements that maybe college education is not necessary, and there are jobs great paying jobs that don't require degrees. That's a fact. That's something that we're dealing with. But I want to go back to something Johnathan said earlier about the importance of being a learner and being a curious person. When I think back on my college experience, I learned a lot of facts. I took a lot of tests. I memorized a lot of things. But really the main thing that I took away from college was the ability to know how to learn. More curiosity, the process of learning, and knowing how to learn, how to find sources, and also the network that I developed in college has continued to influence my life and my business opportunities throughout the years. So I see that through that perspective. Like, education isn't just education, it's so many other pieces of it. So of course I'm going to promote that. I think that it's very important. But also options, freedom, that's something that's kind of come out today as well. Like, there's not just one way to do it. I have 5 children. I think Johnathan said he had 5 as well. You have 3? Yeah. So we all want our kids to find their journey, and they're going to look different. Just like our journeys have looked different. But I think education is a blessing to an individual's life and to a community for far more than just the piece of paper afterwards. It's just a great place to open your mind and expose yourself to new ideas, if you choose to see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, education's a stepping stone, right? Trying to get somewhere. And I do think that as we get more and more choice in education, it's going to just help create a competitive spirit that's going to make things better, because we all need to learn. I mean, my favorite place to learn is literally YouTube. It's like YouTube's incredible. Like if you want a quick idea on anything, just go there and you can watch 50 videos of all varying opinions on something. And so I think those type of things are going to make the education system better. I think the problems you have that whenever government has a monopoly on something, you get no innovation. That's why the Postal Service still like has us buy stamps and send out mail, right? And so I think that hopefully we start to see us being able to embrace more, because I hope I think the universities are an incredible place to gather people and learn. I mean, I met my business partner there. I learned so much there. But I hope we're able to embrace and learn from some of the best people. And that's what's also cool about technology is like you can learn from some of the best people in the world that you would never have access to if you were just learning from your local universities. And hopefully they even embrace that and bring in people virtually and all these kind of things to improve education.
Let's do this. Yeah, go ahead. Then we'll
Let me
end
just
with
comment.
you.
I think, as Jeanette said, universities aren't for everyone. They're trade schools. There's development schools where you can learn to be a coder without spending 4 years and a lot of time and treasure to get a piece of paper that may not help you get a job. I do think they're a great place to learn. When I graduated from university, it was with a degree in Japanese. I mean, it was a humanitarian degree that was about learning, and it let me study a lot of different things. It wasn't a trade degree. I think different people have different courses to take. Some will take a trade course, some will take this course, but all of them should be for learning. I think we do a disservice in our state when we fund our higher education through enrollment rather than through graduation. And that's a big problem. It would be like me bonusing our marketing department on visits to the site rather than purchases of product. Visits to the site have an end that we want, a purchase of the product. Enrollment at a college has an end that we should want, learning and graduation. And yet we fund our higher education in Utah based on enrollment. There's something wrong in that incentive program. I am a dropout. Yeah, being a dropout is fine. It's fine, but but I think what we're doing is we're encouraging people to bring people in and not necessarily have the structure for success. You could be there and decide you have the structure for success and leave anyway, but if we bring too many in that can't be successful in that organization, then it's not good.
Okay, my name is Robert Ahlstrom. I work for a company called Airtable, and I'm also Idofalls Transplants. It's good to connect there. The big talk right now in tech is, layoffs, and that causes companies to, everybody clenches really tight on things, and no one wants to grow their business. So what are some positive things that we can look forward to this year and going forward, so we're not worried about a recession or anything?
Great last question.
I love that question, and I'll go first. I think times of contraction mean times of focus. And focus ultimately makes businesses do better and succeed more quickly. Fat times, you don't say no to any idea. And the hardest thing in running a business is saying no to the good idea so you can say yes to the great idea. I feel like we're in a recession that's going to last for a while. I think my hope is that 2023 is the tale of two halves. It's particularly for our business. I think the first half of the year is going to continue to be hard. I think the second half of the year I see a lot of positive momentum. I think some of the things that we're working on will get solved. The good news is unemployment is still low. There are still companies that are desperately trying to hire people. I know we've got a lot of open job recs at Overstock. So sometimes being laid off, as painful as it is that day, and the next day and the next day until you get a job can be great for your career. And as painful as it is to do it at a company, and I've been part of management teams that have done it more times than I would like, which, would be even one, it's helped us focus and become better. And I think that's what tough economic times bring, and I think that's what's going to come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially in tech, if we're just talking about tech right now, I don't have like any concerns. I think a lot of these companies are very overhired, and it's kind of shame on them. Like, what were they doing? I mean, we all felt that as employers in Utah, like the last 2 years, like pay was going insane, like everything was going crazy, and which was also weird because COVID was going on, and you're like, what's going on right now? I feel like I was living in an alternate reality. But I think
people needed to buy more patio.
Yeah, sure, more patio furniture. But I do think that most of these people, especially in the tech industry, and it's not all of them, but most of them, they're in some ways it's like they're getting these incredible severance packages and probably finding a job within the next week. I don't know if there's too many people who are super concerned about somebody in the tech world right now, because there were, in the state of Utah prior to that, there was like 8 job openings for every person that was looking as like a software developer and things like that. So I think most of that should be eaten up by other companies that are in need of people. But maybe it does lower the salaries a little bit, but they had been growing like crazy.
Exactly. It's been hard to compete with those salaries. When I have someone coming in wanting an entry level office job for $75,000, I'm like, the math doesn't work for me that way. But they were finding it at other places. So there's a right sizing that's happening, and we're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of a chapter that may define us. When you read historical perspectives on individuals and companies, those chapters that we're writing right now are so pivotal, because good things come out of these hard times. And so I think it's kind of exciting and interesting to see where are we going to be. Constraints, like Johnathan said, breed creativity. We find solutions. We once did a whole issue of Business Q on failure, which is not normally my thing. We like to focus on what went well. But we studied some failures. And one of the common things that these companies said is that money made them stupid. And you mentioned that earlier. You get too much funding too early. You start just wasting it instead of right-sizing your processes and your pricing, and eventually those things catch up to you. So we're in the middle of a chapter that we'll see how this goes. But I think if we ride the wave and look at it, what can I learn? How can I fix my business? How can I focus on the great ideas and not just the good ones? I think it's a long-term win. It's a long-term gain for Utah. And I think we'll see that. I think next year, if we were having the same conversation 12 months from now, we'd go, actually there were a lot of good things that happened to our economy and to the job creation and salaries and all of the things that are kind of finding an evener spot right now. I think it's a net positive.
Thank you, Jeanette Bennett, John Pestana, Johnathan Johnson, this year's Silicon Slopes Hall of Fame inductees. Please join me in congratulating them. I believe you can learn more about the Hall of Fame at siliconslopes.com. I don't know if there's tickets or not left, but I'm sure there are. If you want to come, let us know. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of Utah Tech Week.